Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. I've got computer number 2 of 2 that I'm building in the last couple of days before Christmas, and it's another NZXT build. As I've mentioned in the other video, I don't know which one's going to come out first. I'm not deliberately doing anything with NZXT at the moment. It just so happens that both of these computers are being done in NZXT cases. However, also I'm practicing getting back into doing build and review videos. So the format of this video might wander around slightly because I'm kind of going to be doing a soft review of this NZXT H1 case, just to practice reviewing cases again, because I do want to get back into doing that. This build is going to be a mixed new and second-hand build. I've got some new bits and some old bits here. And so the rough spec of this computer is going to be this H1 case. I've got a Ryzen 5600 Non-X here. I've got an RTX 2060. I've got 16 gigs of RAM, and I've got a 1 terabyte SSD, and I've got an AM4 motherboard ITX to lob in there as well. And so the spec for this computer is a little bit oddball. I was going to pair a 3700X with this 2060. However, the second-hand 3700X that I ordered just hasn't arrived in time. This is due to a mixture of reasons, but the long and the short of it is I have to do this build today. I'm out of time. It hasn't shown up, so I've grabbed this 5600X that I also had in stock. So the CPU is a bit of an oddball match for this build. However, the customer is getting a free upgrade effectively because I didn't get the parts in time. So, you know, at the end of the day, slightly oddball matching, but it's going to work just fine. The case, I picked up this H1, scan.co.uk were selling this H1 case, which comes with a 650 watt power supply and a 120mm liquid cooler. They were selling them for £100. So 100 quid for a premium case, power supply and liquid cooler. I was like, hell yeah, can't go wrong with that. I kind of wanted to do something a bit more with it and make a little bit more money on this, but again, very last minute build that I wanted to try and get done for the customer. I was like, you know what, let's just lob all of this stuff together and make sure that someone gets a new PC for Christmas. So, yeah, weird build. Here we are, content. Roll the intro and let's start building. Now, before I actually build this thing up, I do want to quickly bench test this motherboard and CPU combo. This is an A520M motherboard, so fairly low-end AM4, but it's going to have no problems with a Ryzen 5600. However, I'm not sure if this thing has had a BIOS update since Ryzen 5000 came out. This is a known good motherboard. It's not a very exotic one, but it'll do the job. However, as I say, not sure if it's actually had a BIOS update, and if it hasn't, that's going to cause me some problems because I don't have a Ryzen 3000 CPU kicking around right now. Actually, I do, but it's a 3950X, so I don't want to have to BIOS update this. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly just build up this board and just see if it posts so I know in advance if I'm going to have a problem or not. Because, yeah, this thing doesn't have BIOS flashback. So if there is a problem, then I'm going to have to find either a compatible CPU or I'm going to have to manually program the BIOS chip. And both of those is a pain in the ass. So let's lob in this Ryzen 5600. Whoop. The problem with low-end motherboards like this is they don't have a lot to speak of in terms of VRM. You can see this thing's got a tiny little VRM setup over there. However, the Ryzen 5600 Non-X, this thing is going to sip power, so you know it's going to be a non-issue as far as anyone is concerned. So let's lob in this DDR4 RAM kit. It's a good-looking kit, this. Even though the motherboard looks a little bit dorky on this, by the time we've built this up with some nice RAM and a liquid cooler, and it's in that NZXT case, this is going to look really nice. Yeah, 5.5 USB ports. It's not the greatest, but functional. Got built-in Wi-Fi as well. The joys of ITX boards, because they won't sit still on the desk when you actually plug everything into them. Okay, where's the front panel on this? Down here? Oh, there we go. Probably should have plugged in a beep speaker or something. It has posted, and it's throwing up a FTPM warning message. Okay, that's fine. I don't care about any of that. The important thing is that it has posted, so I know that it has the Ryzen 5000 CPU BIOS update support update BIOS. It's going to work. Let's put it in the case. So I've got this crucial P3 SSD that I'm going to put on here. However, this motherboard doesn't have a heatsink for its M.2 drive. Now, most of the time, unless you're using a really high-end drive, like a top-end drive that will do 5,000 megs per second and stuff like that, you'll be fine. The Crucial P3 is a good drive. I think these are like 2,000 or 3,000. But also, you're only really going to start heating up the drive. You're doing lots of long, sustained transfers or just a lot of I/O hammering, which is not really something that gaming PCs do. So I wouldn't say it's absolutely critical to have a heatsink, and it will probably survive without one. But what I do have, I went for a rummage, and I've got some. A while back, I bought a bunch of these little M.2 heatsinks. And I was going to experiment with heatsinks on M.2 drives. But this was years ago when they were very new, and no one was sure if heatsinks actually mattered or not. And I've got them lying around. They came with these big, thick thermal pads. And it looks like if I put one thermal pad there, I can put this guy on top of it, and it can just sink a little bit of residual heat onto the PCH heatsink down here. And that should be enough just to keep everything happy. So I'm going to peel that back, and we'll just put a big fat thermal pad underneath the SSD, and that will make sure that that is completely fine as well. That hasn't exactly sealed terribly well. This could probably be improved. However, the controller is here. That's the bit that actually matters. The NAND doesn't really care about heat. However, the controller, that's the bit that you need to cool, and that is under tension from the actual M.2 connector there. So that's going to do absolutely fine. It will probably settle a bit over time as it squashes that pad down, and that will improve the contact space there. So I think that'll do perfectly all right. So that's all the stuff on the motherboard for now. We might need to put a backplate on the back of it, the original AMD one. Not sure if that's needed or not, but I've got a box of them. So, you know, if we need one, then I'll stick one on there. Let's unbox the case and take a look. So the H1 is not a new chassis. It's been around for a while, and it's actually it's spent a lot of its time mired in controversy as well, because this guy uses a PCI Express riser card to relocate the GPU. The riser card that was originally shipped with it was very poorly designed. It had grounding issues that could result in short circuits or even fire. And that kind of put a bit of a downer on this case, really. However, this has been resolved now, and when I open this one up, I should find that it has the revised version of the riser card in it that doesn't have any such problems, although I will check for that. So first of all, the overall size of this thing, I have to admit, this is a very compelling size for a computer. I do see the appeal of ITX, and actually I kind of like the form factor of this one, because they've opted for a tall rather than long and low kind of thing. It's a lot like with the Corsair One. The vertical design is a lot more space efficient. You can fit a big graphics card in it, but it still has a small footprint on the desk, which is what is actually genuinely useful. But unlike the Corsair One, it's actually serviceable, because the Corsair One, as you know, it is a slick bit of kit, but my God, they're difficult to work with. So I'm kind of hoping this is going to be a lot easier. Now, I don't know how this comes apart. I'm just going to see if any panels pull off. Not easily, I don't think. There's probably access from the bottom. The bottom is actually quite open. That's where the I/O and everything is going to appear. So, oh, there is actually instructions. It has labels on it. Right, one to remove, pull to remove the front glass panel. There's nowhere to hold on to. Ah, there we go. Right, glass panel off. So that is got a metal back on it, so it actually is a nice solid panel. Good. And the other side also comes off, I assume. Yep. Okay, so hopefully I can start pulling stuff out from here now, by some means. We've got stuff here. Lift here to release. Okay, that's a little panel cover for the back of the power supply. There's our riser cable for the graphics card. Dare I say it, I might need the instruction manual. But the instruction manual is in there. How do I get in? How do I into the case? I don't know what to do now. People who already know their way around this case will be screaming at me now. And they'll be like, you idiot, you just do this. I'm like, I don't know. Ah, it does slide. Okay, hold on. It's going to slide. Ah, there we go. There we go. All right. So that's the outer case. That slides off, and that has got filters on both sides that come out. That's actually that's very easy to do once you realize it. Oh, look at that. It had a heckin' label on it saying 3, slide cover off the top of the frame. Whatever. I knew that. You're an idiot. Shut up. Remember, screws pointed by arrows are lift to... Remember, screws pointed by arrows and lift to open. Check for cable and tube clearance when closing. Okay. I guess that means take the screws out and then lift it out. All right, that's our all-in-one cooler. So now that can come off, and this guy can kind of work his way out. All right, so that's a very low-profile Acertech AIO there. It doesn't have any of the fancy ring light on the front or anything like that, but you're not going to see any of that. Yeah, I'm actually not sure what ends up being on show in this case. So, yeah, okay then. However, now I can get this packaging out. All right, we've got a backplate and mounting setup for the AIO. We've got some cable ties. We've got a adapter for the front panel header. The front panel header is a solid block because NZXT are bros. However, if you have an incompatible case, they've got an adapter included in there, so you've got a breakout cable. They've also got a headphone combo jack adapter, which is a nice touch as well. I'm impressed that they've supplied one of those. That's also very good. I wouldn't expect that to come with the case. However, I'm glad it does because it's annoying if you need one of those. Right, the instruction manual looks like it's an enormous poster. I hate it because this is going to cover the entire desk. So a moment of crucial importance here. We know that this is the updated version because these screws are on plated through holes. This was where the problem was with this case. The original version of it, these holes were not plated through holes. So if this screw had eaten into the PCB, it could short the 12-volt rail of the PCI Express connector to the chassis, resulting in a direct short to ground. And that would at best cause the computer to cut out, and at worst, you would get heat buildup, which could result in melting, smoke, or even an actual fire. So yeah, this version has been updated. It's not one of the old versions or anything like that, so that's good to know. When these were being sold off for 100 quid, I was a bit suspicious, but I guess they're just not moving. You know, all in all, I think this is really good value so far, this case. Even if it's not my preference, I still think it's pretty decent. Anyway, let's carry on building it up. So our motherboard is going to go in down here, like so. Come on, get in there. That slides in. All right, I'm going to preemptively undo all of these. Right, and then up here we've got this little bit here where we had the cover, which I think went on this side. Yeah, here we go. That little cubby hole there, that's where you can put in a couple of 2.5-inch SSDs. So you can put in some extra storage there, and they've got SATA cables already wired up for that bit. We've got just M.2 storage here, so no problems there. So for now, I guess I just start plugging in all my power cables. There's not really a whole lot we've got to do with this system because no drives and most of the case is pre-plumbed. This is a lot like doing a bare bones install from back in the day. Asus did a series of bare bones computers which would come with motherboard, and all you needed to do is supply a CPU, hard drive and RAM, I think it was, and you more or less had a ready-to-go PC. Right, the case does have a USB Type-C front port on it, but I don't have a header for that on this motherboard, so we're going to leave this one disconnected for now. However, the 3.0 front port, I can plug that in, and then I can also plug in the front panel connectors for the power button and also the front panel audio. And the AIO has got two cables coming off of it. We've got a 3-pin cable for the pump, so that's going to plug into our, let's see, we're going to plug that into chassis fan 1, and we'll basically just run that at full speed, or like 90% or something like that. And then the fan will plug into the CPU fan header, and that can just track CPU temperature. When you're setting up AIOs, there is some mileage in controlling the pump speed based on CPU temperature first, because the coolant flow rate will have a bigger impact on immediately cooling the chip down than the fan will. The fan is actually quite delayed because the fan has to cool down the coolant. So having the fan quickly respond to changing temperatures doesn't actually help you very much. However, there's no need to overthink the cooling setup on this. Just run the pump at full, run the fan based on CPU temperature. That easy. So we're going to need to get the back plate and this liquid cooler mounted up now. So let's open this up. So there's our back plate, and we've got the Intel mounts there for the square and the AMD ones here on the rectangle. And there's AM3 and AM4 brackets there. So that's why there's double slits. And we've also got a bracket here which we'll need to swap out on this guy to switch over to the AM4 setup. And you know, I'll tell you what, although this has got AMD slots on it, it doesn't look like they actually intend you to use them because it's come with a hook setup, and that is intended to go on the stock retention bracket. So I'm going to go and grab a stock retention bracket and stick that on the board. Right, and this has got a circle of pre-applied thermal paste on it, which I think is a bit naff, to be honest. I'm actually going to remove that and put some MX4 directly on the chip, because that's not going to give full chip coverage. So I'm going to reapply my own. I'm not normally a thermal paste snob. I'm sure this will work, however I can just see clearly that that's not going to provide full coverage. That's not super impressive if I'm honest. It'd be fine for Intel, but not up to snuff for an AMD chip which has got a bigger IHS on it and more spread underneath. Not that this cooling system is going to be an absolute beast anyway. 120mm AIOs are barely worth it. The value in this system is how compact it is. All right, we're going on. One hook. Two hooks. Just make sure that's nicely centered. And now I'll just turn these down to the stop. Now we don't need to graunch these tight. These bolts are spring loaded, and it's these springs that provide the tension. So we just want to turn these until they stop moving of their own accord, and that will be sufficient tension on the cooler. There we go, that guy is on. And the cables are plugged in. So I'm just going to guide that down. That just flops over the top. Okay, those guys are going out sideways. That's our audio cable. That can go there. Everything else has gone where it's supposed to. Just make sure that those cables are relaxed. I'll plug in the PCI Express header now. That's just going to come around and plug in like that. Donezo. Now we're going to put our graphics card in. So this guy's going to be pretty straightforward. We've got a 2-slot here for it to fit into, and there are some PCI Express connectors there to plug into it. So I should just be able to just Tetris this guy in and plug it in as if it's a normal graphics card now. There we go, that goes in like that. Then a couple of screws just to lock it into place. So as you can see, there's room for a bigger graphics card in here. You can fit something fairly chunky in there. I think as long as you're not past 2 slots, to be honest, because this side panel is all vented, so you've got direct air onto the fans, but a 2.5 slot graphics card, having the fans right up against the mesh is not terribly preferable. So I wouldn't be a fan of having a 2.5 slot cooler in this. But if you can fit within those 2 slots, you've got quite a bit more height and a fair bit more length you can go for. And it has got dual 8-pin connectors, and those are dual 8-pin back to the power supply as well. This isn't a pigtail, which is also quite impressive. They've done it properly. The only thing is, I still don't actually know which panel the glass goes on this yet, so I don't actually know where the front is. I'm guessing it's going to be maybe that side or that side. To be honest, neither are particularly attractive to look at. I'd imagine some people have managed to figure out how best to make this case look really nice. However, this is my first time using one of these. This side probably looks reasonably good because you see the side of the graphics card. Right, that's basically us done. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab all of the spare fittings I've got, cram them all back into bags and stuff them into these 2.5-inch bays to keep all of the fittings with this case, because they're all very specific to this, so we don't want to lose them. Right, and that is fundamentally it. So we'll just slide these guys back on. There's some nice grooves to make sure they line up. Old cases from the 90s used to have a U-shaped cover that went over the top, and they were always a pain to put back on. But this has been nicely designed not to have that issue. And we'll stick the back panel on. So there's the view through the back. Guess I'll make sure the power supply is on. Didn't do a very good job of the sticker peeling there, so isopropyl alcohol. That's got the worst of it off, but there's still a smeary mess there, so now I'll go in with the glass cleaner. And finally, multi-surface polish, just to give it a nice smooth anti-static finish. And there we have it, everyone. Now that's a real tower. So this guy is ready to plug in and turn on. So let's plug some power cables in and make sure it starts and runs. And then we can finish up. Power on. All right, so there's not much to see with it turned on now because there's nothing here that actually lights up meaningfully. You could put lights inside to shine through the tinted glass and then you would see more of the interior, but it's a bit of a dishwasher of plumbing on the inside here. So unless you spent an awful lot of time tidying up the inside to make it look cleaner on the inside, which could probably be done. If you really went to town on this, you could probably clean up the inside a lot, but even still, really, I think the only thing you can really showcase is the GPU, and then you still need the vent on the side panel anyway. So I'm not sure how much value there is with this. But the tinted glass on the front is kind of cool because you get something to break up the textures on the side. You know, you've got the glass shininess here and the matte white on the side. And if you look closely, you can see that there's stuff inside. And like because the backside is vented as well, there's a little bit of light shining through there, so you can kind of see through it. So that kind of makes sense to me. It's the only time where I think tinted glass actually works, in my opinion. Other than that, I prefer clear glass. So yeah, the rest of it was actually very straightforward to build in. NZXT have done a really good job of pre-wiring this, so you don't have to do much. If I had to route all of the power supply cables and stuff like that, this would have been an awful lot more work to build up. But because so much of it is just pre-assembled and ready to go, it was really easy to build in. And again, £100 for this, man. I need to get back onto scan.co.uk and see if they've got any more, because, you know, that's a really good way to build up a cheap PC that looks really smart. I think my only other complaint about this is to get to the I/O on the bottom, you do have to turn it over and there's all your input on the bottom. So that's kind of a pain in the ass, especially because on top, we've got a Type-C port, only got one Type-A port. So not the most convenient computer in the world to that respect, if you're in the habit of plugging and unplugging lots of peripherals. The other thing as well is, like, this motherboard has got built-in Wi-Fi, and the antennas kind of are at the bottom, and I'm like, not sure what I'm going to do about that. I might need to, I can put the antennas on there. I'm not sure how good the reception is going to be having them under there. Failing that, you might need to look out for something that has some external antennas, or just buy some external antennas that are on little cables so you can have them like magneted to the back or something. But other than that, let's have a quick look and just make sure the BIOS is set up. So at the moment, we're back on the new CPU installed thing. So I'm going to hit Y to reset FTPM. And in the BIOS setup here, we can see this is looking correct. We've got our Ryzen 5 5600, and we've got 16 gigs of RAM. So I'm going to make sure that we've got XMP on. So we're going to set that to the XMP profile. That's set to 3200, which is all fine. And there's not a lot else that I really need to change in here. The only other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to check our cooling setup. So, ooh, don't like that temperature. I need to change the chassis fan speed. In fact, I don't think our pump is running. There's something wrong there. There's something really wrong there. I'm going to quickly save and then turn it off. Okay. Chassis fan 1 setting, full speed. Okay, there we go. That's the problem. The chassis 1 setting was set to silent on this motherboard, so there you go. Now the pump is running at full speed. You can see our CPU is actually under control. So yeah, in a surprise to no one, if you don't run the liquid coolant pump, then your CPU overheats. So that's fine. The fan setting, that can stay on silent mode. That will be fine. I will give this a stress test once I've got Windows installed on it. And we'll just, I'll just make sure that that is set up nicely. And is our RAM? Yeah, our RAM is up to 3200 now, so that's all good as well. All right, so all that's left is now for me to install Windows on this thing, and it's ready to go out to the customer. So yeah, I hope you guys found that interesting. Nice little chassis, this. I'm not a big fan of ITX, but I got to admit, when you see setups like this, I see the appeal, you know. If you were trying to do a big system and put a big ass graphics card in there, you're going to start running into, you're going to have to start fighting things. And like, we've got 650 watts on tap, which is enough for up to, you know, mid-range, high-end kind of thing. But if you were going much past, like, I don't know, a 3070 or something like that, where you're going to start running out of watts, suddenly you're going to start running into trouble. But for mid-range systems, like, you know, well, up to and including 3060s or 3070s, this is a great setup, and it puts a lot of gaming power into a small box, which I can just pick up, and you can have it up, you know, even if you don't have an enormous desk, you can have it up on the desk instead of having to have it on the floor. So there are a few concessions about that, you know, not many USBs at the front. You know, like, they could have had 2 USB Type A ports up the top there. There's no reason not to. But even still, I think it's a nice case. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.